What's going on, everyone? Andre here from Andre the Alpha, and today we're diving deep into RC Raiders, the new extraction shooter from Embark Studio that's finally hitting the market on October 30th. Now, I know what you're thinking, another extraction shooting in a market that's already getting crowded with titles like Marathon dropping, Escape from Tarkov dominating the hardcore space, and everyone trying to capture that lightning in a bottle. But here's the thing, after spending some serious time with this game through beta tests, the server slams, and the full release, I've got something to tell you. RC Raiders might actually be the one that cracks the code for making extraction shooters accessible without losing what makes them special. And look, I'm not here to blow smoke up anyone's butt. Embark isn't sponsoring this video. They don't even know I exist yet. So honestly, after the finals, I was a bit skeptical whether or not they could pull something off this ambition in a completely different genre. But man, they've done something genuinely fresh here while respecting what makes extraction shooters tick. So grab a drink, settle in, because we're deep diving in this one, the good, the bad, and everything in between. This is my full review of Arc Raiders. Alright, let's start with the basics for anyone who hasn't been following the development journey. Arc Raiders started back in 2021 as a completely different beast. It was supposed to be this co-op third-person shooter where you and your buddies fought off waves of enemy robots. Pretty standard stuff, but somewhere along the way, Embark had this moment of clarity where they basically said, you know what, this isn't fun, and I respect that. They pivoted into making a player versus a shooter, and that decision fundamentally changed everything about what this game became. The premise is actually compelling when you dig into it. We're 150 years into the future. Earth has been completely devastated by these mechanical invaders called the Arc machines. Think Horizon Zero Dawn meets Terminator, but with its own unique twist. Humanity's been forced underground into a city called the Speranza, and you play as a raider, basically someone who's brave enough or stupid enough, depending on how you look at it, to venture up to the scavenger for resources. Other players are up there too, all trying to get their piece of the pie. Every is a 30-minute window where you've got to balance fighting Arc machines and potentially dealing with other players who might either help or shoot you in the back, and most importantly, getting out alive with your loot, because if you die, you lose everything you brought and everything you found. That's extraction shooters for you. Now let me talk to you about the world they built here, because this is where Arc Raiders really starts to separate itself from the pack. When you first boot up the game and drop into the battlegrounds, which is the first map you'll encounter, there's this immense sense that Embark knows how to craft atmosphere. We're talking about Unreal Engine 5 here at work, and they're not just using it as a tech demo. The way the light filters through the abandoned structures, how nature is reclaimed in these industrial spaces, the fog rolling across the flooded lowlands, it all comes together to create this post-apocalyptic vibe that generally feels unique. I say post-apocalyptic because it's not your typical brown wasteland. There's color here. There's life trying to push back through the ruins. You'll be moving through overgrown research centers one minute and then crossing through dark forests that generally feel threatening the next. The environmental storytelling is subtle but effective. You can piece together what happened to this world just by paying attention to the details scattered around. And the sound design is a damn chef kiss. Seriously, playing this game with a decent headset transforms the entire experience. You're constantly listening for audio cues, the footsteps that might be another player, the distant sounds of a firefight that might mean opportunity or danger. During the night raids, especially when visibility drops and you're relying on more sound than audio, becomes this critical tactical tool that keeps you on edge in the best possible way. Fun fact, this actually takes place in the same universe as the finals. Just about 80 years later, you'll some familiar brands and Easter eggs if you've been paying attention, which is actually a nice touch for anyone who's been following Embark's work so far. Alright, let's get into the meat and potatoes. How does this thing actually play? The core loop is deceptively simple, but it has layers that reveal themselves the more you play. You start in Speranza, your underground hub. This isn't some massive explorable city like Destiny's Tower. It's more of a functional menu space, but it works. You got vendors, a workshop, and crafting, your loadout management, and quest givers all in one spot. It's effective without being overwhelming. Before each raid, you make decisions. What weapons do I bring? How much am I willing to risk? Do I go in light for speed or heavy for combat? These aren't throwaway choices. Remember, if you die out there, you lose it all. There's this constant risk versus reward calculation happening that keeps every routine running feeling tense. Once you deploy, you got 30 minutes and that's it. The extraction point starts to disappear over time, so the longer you stay, the fewer options you have for getting out. It's this brilliant pressure system that forces decision making. Do you push for that high tier loot area knowing that other players might be thinking the same thing? Do you play it safe and distract early with modest gains? Every raid becomes this mini story of choices and consequences. The actual moment to moment gameplay feels very solid. Movement is responsive with your standard third person shooter controls. Sprint, slide, vault, climb. Nothing revolutionary, everything works as it should. The parkour elements add verticality to encounters without turning it into Titanfall. You can climb and traverse the environment in ways that open up tactical options, but you're not wall running or doing superhero moves. It feels super grounded. Now the combat. This is where the options are going to split, and I need to be real with you here. If you're coming from something like Call of Duty or even Apex Legends, expecting that same twitch reflex, instant kill gameplay, you're going to need to adjust your expectations. Arc Raiders has what developers call combat beats and flow, and at first I wasn't sold on it. The time to kill is longer than what most shooter fans are used to. Firefights aren't over in 2 seconds. But here's the thing, once I understood what they were going for, it clicked. These extended engagements create actual tactical exchanges. You're not just whoever sees who wins first. There's time to react, to reposition, to use your gadgets, and to make decisions. It turns firefights into these chess matches where repositioning, resource management, and smart play matters just as much as raw aim. The weapon variety keeps things interesting. You got your standard rifle, shotgun, the usual suspects, but then there are energy weapons, railguns, and special anti-arc weapons that completely change how you approach encounters. Weapons like the Arpeggio, SMG, and the Tempest were absolutely melting people, breaking that attendant flow. Embarks has been pretty transparent about rebalancing these to maintain their vision, and honestly, the game will be better for it. Each weapon class feels distinct and has its role. The Anvil rifle was dominating at ranges where snipers should excel, so they tuned that. The Vulcan shotgun was basically invalidating the SMG entirely with its range and damage. These aren't just number of tweaks, they're trying to ensure the loadout choices actually matter and create different playstyles. One thing that I really appreciate is how they handled the shotguns. In most player versus player games, shotguns are either completely broken or useless. Here they found that sweet spot where they're viable without being oppressive. You can actually run a shotgun build and not feel like you're handicapping yourself, which is actually really refreshing. Let's talk about the big bad, the arc machines. If you got arachnophobia like I do, I got some bad news for you. These things are legitimately unsettling, especially the smaller spider variants that do from ceilings and corner, but it's not just about being creepy. Each archetype represents a different tactical challenge. You got your basic ticks that hang around for ambush attack, hornets and rocketeers that attack from the air, forcing you to manage vertical space, snitches, that's what they're called, that spots you and call for reinforcements. And then there's this damn queen, the massive mechanical spider boss that can absolutely ruin your day if you're not prepared. What makes the arc interesting from a gameplay perspective is that they aren't just obstacles, they're opportunities. Every arc drops valuable components that you need for crafting and progression, so there's always a question whether engaging with them is worth the noise and the resources you'll expend. Because here's the thing about Arc Raiders, noise attracts attention, both from more dangerously from other players. The AI behavior is pretty impressive. These aren't your standard patrol and shoot enemies. They respond to sound, they investigate disturbances, they work together in ways that they can catch you off guard. During night raids especially, when the arc activity ramps up and visibility drops, they become generally threatening. You can't just run and gun your way out through them. The progression system at Arc Raiders is where things get interesting for long-term play. Even if you die and lose everything, you still earn XP. This is a smart move because it means no raid is completely wasted. You're always moving forward in some way, which really helps take sustain of those brutal losses where you were 1 minute from extraction with a bag full of legendaries. The skill tree branches into 3 paths: conditioning, mobility, and survival. These aren't game-breaking upgrades, but meaningful improvements that let you tune your playstyle. Want to be a goblin loot? Spec everything into capacity and movement speed. Prefer fighting? Go for stamina regeneration and damage reduction. The choices feel impactful without creating a massive power gap between new and veteran players. Crafting is your main resource sink and progression goal. Your workshop in Speranza has different stations for weapons, gadgets, and augments, which each can be upgraded to unlock better blueprints and crafting options. It's familiar but well executed. You're always working towards something. Maybe it's that next tier weapon, maybe it's you're upgrading your workshop to craft better shields. There's always a carrot on stick. The augment system adds another layer of this customization. These are basically passive bonuses that come with trade-offs. You might get a better shield but less inventory space, or improved combat stats at the cost of fewer gadget slots. It's min-maxing for people who love that sort of thing, but casual players can ignore it and still be competitive. What I really appreciate is the vendor quest system. The PCs in Speranza aren't just shop interfaces, they have personality, agendas, and stories that unfold through their missions. It's not buyer war level narrative or anything, but it adds context and flavor to what you're doing. Plus, completing their quests gives you exclusive rewards and XP, so there's this mechanical incentive to engage with them. Here's where things get spicy: the player versus player element. Every player you encounter is a potential threat or an ally, and this crisis uncertainty creates some of the most intense moments in the game. The proximity chat is this whole social dynamic that you don't get in most shooters. You might run into someone in a tense standoff where you're both talking, trying to figure out if you can trust each other. Sometimes you team up to take down a queen. Sometimes someone pretends to be friendly and shoots you in the back when you turn around. It's brutal and it's unfair and it's absolutely brilliant. The game does try to keep things somewhat balanced with its matchmaking. Solos match with solos, squads get matched with squads. At least that's the intention, but nothing stops solos from teaming up once they are in a match, and nothing stops squads from hunting down solo players once they're in a squad. It's this wild west out there, and that unpredictability is both the game's biggest strength and potentially the biggest turnoff for some players. What is interesting is how the player versus event elements interact. You might be in a firefight with another squad when suddenly a patrol of arc machines show up and now everyone's fighting on two fronts. Or you might hear a massive battle in the distance. Do you third party it, hoping to clean up the survivors? Or do you use a distraction to hit up that high value loot area while everyone else is busy? These organic moments that emerge from the system interacting where the arc raiders really shine. The third person perspective is going to be divisive. If you're a hardcore FPS purist, this might be a deal breaker for you. The corner peek advantage is real and it does change the technical dynamics compared to the first person games, but Embark has been clear. This game was built from the ground up for third person. They're not adding a first person mode. The assets, the animation, the entire visual pipeline is designed for over the shoulder view. Design director Virgil Watkins straight up said that when you get up close to assets in the first person, it kind of falls apart. So this is what we got, take it or leave it. And personally, after some adjustment time, I was fine with it. The third person view gives you a better situational awareness, which feels appropriate for a game about survival and tactical decision making rather than pure reflexes. Plus, let's be honest, they want to sell cosmetics, and you can't see your cool outfits in first person. At launch, each map has its own personality and tactical considerations. The damn Battlegrounds is your introductory map, flooded with lowlands, abandoned structures, a good mix of open and closed spaces. It's designed to teach you the game's mechanics while still offering depth for experienced players. The Berry City is more urban with abandoned buildings, creating a verticality of focused combat spaces. The spaceport is this derelict launch facility where you're fighting among the remains of humanity's failed escaped attempts. Blue Gate is all mountains and underground facilities, completely changing the engagement ranges and sightlines. But here's the kicker: these aren't static spaces. Dynamic weather conditions completely change how these maps play. Electromagnetic storms that mess with your equipment, fog that reduces your visibility to almost nothing. Night raids are particularly intense. Reduced visibility, increased activity, better loot. It's a risk reward distilled into existence. Harvest season floods the area with nature-based resources, but also increased competition. Hidden bunkers open up during certain conditions, creating areas to explore and fight over. These variations means if you play the same map 50 times, it won't feel identical. The core geography stays the same, but the experience changes each time. The environmental design deserves special attention as well. This isn't about just making things look pretty, though it definitely does. The way spaces are constructed creates natural combat areas, endpoints, and puzzles. You're constantly reading the environment, looking for advantages, planning routes. It feels like a lived-in world rather than a multiplayer map, which also has the immersion factors. The special condition system is honestly genius. It's not weather effects, though those are part of it. Each condition fundamentally changes how you need to approach the raid. During electromagnetic storms, certain electric equipment stops working. Your fancy gadgets might be useless, forcing you back to basics. It levels the playing field in interesting ways. Night raids are where the game shows its horror game DNA. Visibility drops dramatically, flashlight becomes essential, and the arc machines get way more aggressive, but the rewards are proportionally better. It's a completely different game at night. Slower, more methodical, absolutely terrifying when you hear footsteps in the darkness and you don't know if it's a player or a machine. What's brilliant about these conditions is that they're not just difficulty modifier, they're opportunity create. That squad that's been dominating during the day might struggle at night. That solo player who's been getting bullied might find reduce even the odds. It keeps the meta from getting stale and reward adaptability over pure optimization. Now here's something different. Most shooters do periodic wipes where everyone progress resets to maintain a level playing field. Arc Raiders is trying to do something called the Expedition Project. Once you hit level 20 and gather enough resources over 8 weeks, you can choose to reset your own progress. It's voluntary prestige basically. You keep cosmetics and achievements, but skills, items, and crafting reset. In exchange, you get unique cosmetic rewards, permanent account unlocks, and temporary for that expedition period. It's an interesting solution to the problem. Players who want that fresh start economy can have it, while other players can keep progressing and I'm curious to see how this play out long term. Will it separate player ecosystems? Will peer pressure force even though technically it's voluntary? Time will tell, but I appreciate them trying something new rather than just copying what everyone else does. And let me address something very important. You can play solo? Absolutely. In fact, Arc Raiders might be one of the more friendly solo extraction shooters that I've played. The matchmaking system tries to keep solos with solos, though it's not perfect. The map design does offer plenty of opportunities for stealth and avoidance if you don't want to fight. And critically, all content is accessible solo, so you don't need a squad to experience everything the game has to offer. However, with that being said, squads do have the obvious advantage. Coordinated teams can dominate lobbies, especially when they're hunting for solo players. The game supports up to 3-player squads, which feels like the sweet spot, big enough for technical variety, but small enough that communication doesn't become chaos. What's interesting is how the game encourages temporary alliance between solos. That proximity chat means you can negotiate and form temporary partnerships, but then inevitably betray each other at extraction. It's this emergent gameplay at its finest, creating stories that you'll be able to tell your friends about later. Let's talk about our favorite subject here, money. Arc Raiders abandoned its free-to-play origins for a premium model. $40 for the standard edition, $60 for deluxe. But in today's market, that's actually reasonable, especially compared to the $70 becoming the standard for AAA games. The game uses Raider tokens as its premium currency, which you can earn slowly through gameplay or outright. The battle pass system they call the Raider decks costs 500 tokens, but you can earn about 40 tokens per level through normal gameplay. It's not completely paywalled, but it does take dedication to earn everything without spending. Here's the important part. It's all cosmetics. There's no pay to win elements that I found. You can't buy better guns or armor with real money. The deluxe editions give you cosmetics, a chunk of armor Raider tokens, but nothing that affects the actual gameplay. In a genre where games like Tarkov sells advantages through special editions, this restraint is actually appreciated. The cosmetic variety is solid without being ridiculous. This isn't Fortnite where you're running around as Goku fighting Vader. The skin cosmetics maintain the game's aesthetic while letting you customize your Raider look. It strikes a good balance between personality and cohesion. And can we just take a moment to appreciate the optimization here? The minimum requirements are surprisingly reasonable. A GTX 1050 Ti or a RX 580 will get you in the door. Recommended specs ask for a RTX 2070 or a XT, which in 2025 standards is pretty accessible. This isn't another Unreal Engine game that requires a nuclear reactor to run properly. During my playthrough, the performance was remarkably stable. I was running a 4070 Ti. I was getting consistent frame rates above 100 at 1440p with settings cranked. But even friends with older hardware reported smooth gameplay with some adjustment settings. The scalability is super impressive. It looks great maxed out, but still presentable on low settings. The serviceability was super solid. One thing to note, although it might be a no-brainer, this game is always online. No offline mode. If your internet dies, you can't play. That's the standard for extraction shooters, but it's worth mentioning if you have unreliable internet. The netcode does feel good though. I haven't experienced any outrageous lag or desync issues that plague some online shooters. Alright, let's break down what Arc Raider really absolutely nails. First, the atmosphere and the world building are very top tier. This feels like a real place with history and character, not just a multiplayer map. The environmental storytelling, the audio design, and the visual presentation all comes together to create something memorable. The risk-reward balance is perfectly tuned. Every decision feels meaningful because the stakes are real. The tension of being loaded with loot and trying to make every extraction never gets old. Your heart rate spikes when you hear footsteps, exactly what extraction shooters should do. The player-event-player integration is seamless. The Arc machines aren't just a farm, they're an active part of the ecosystem. They create these opportunities, these complications, and these organic moments that keep feeling fresh. The way that player and the AI threats overlap and interact is generally innovative. Progression feels rewarding without being gritty. You're always progressing towards something, whether it's XP, materials, or quest completion. Even failed raids contribute to your overall achievement, which takes some sting out of the loss. The gunplay and the combat, once you adjust to the pace, it feels satisfying and technical. Firefights have weight and consequence. You're not just spraying and praying. Positioning, resource management, and decision making matters as much as aim. The map variety and dynamic conditions give the game some legs. 4 maps might not sound like much, but with the weather effects and special conditions, there's enough variety to keep things interesting. Now here's for the rough edges. The third person's perspective is divisive, and the corner peeking meta that comes with it won't appeal to everyone. If you're a competitive FPS purist, this might be a hard sell for you. The developers have been clear this won't change, so you need to adapt and just move on. The time to kill being longer than typical shooters does take some adjustments. Some players are going to bounce off of this hard, expecting Call of Duty or something more like Division. It's not bad, but it's just different, and that difference might be too much for some people. The hub, while functional, does lack some personality compared to the surface world. It's basically a menu with extra steps. I wish there was more to do and explore here, and more social features, something to make it feel more alive. Content quality at launch is a question mark. The learning curve is real here. The game doesn't hold your hand at all, and the new players are gonna get stumped. There's no tutorial for the meta game, when to extract, when to read the map, and when to engage versus to avoid. You learn by dying, which some will find frustrating. Balance is being figured out. The weapons adjustments from the beta show they're actively working on it, but expect some weapons and strategies to dominate early on until the first patch arrives. Here's what worried me long term. The extraction shooter market is getting crowded fast. Marathon is coming, Escape from Tarkov continues to dominate the hardcore space, and games like Forever Winter are trying similar things. Arc Raiders is to carve out niche quickly and hold on to it. The voluntary reset system could fragment the player base. If half the players reset and half don't, you might end up with this weird matchmaking situation where gear disparities might become a problem. It's an experiment, and experiments can fail. Cheating could kill this game as well. Extraction shooters are particularly vulnerable to cheaters because the stakes are so high. Losing your gear to a legitimate player stings but feels fair. Losing to a cheater might make you want to uninstall. The solo experience, while possible, might not retain players long term. These games are inherently more fun with friends, and solo players might drift away if they keep getting squad wiped. The matchmaking tries to separate solos and squad, but it's definitely not perfect. Server population is critical for extraction shooters. You need enough players for matchmaking to make it work, for it to feel populated but not overcrowded. If the player base shrinks, the whole experience suffers. Launch populations will be fine, but what about 6 months from now? So how does Arc Raiders stack up the competition? Tarkov is far more accessible. Tarkov is a military simulation with extraction shooter elements. It's punishing, it's complex, and it's niche. Arc Raiders is approachable while maintaining depth. If Tark is Dark Souls, Arc Raiders is more remnant, challenging but fair. Compared to Hunt Shadows Down, Arc Raiders is more modern and sci-fi, where Hunt is more horror. Hunt's audio design might be slightly better, but Arc Raiders has more variety and encounters in progressive systems. Both nail the atmosphere in different ways. The Forever is probably the closest comparison, another third-person extraction shooter with player versus elements, but the Forever leans harder into horror and desperation, while Arc Raiders maintains some hope and colorful world. Both are valid approaches, just different vibes. Marathon is the big unknown. Bungie pedigree means it'll be polished, but we know so little about how it actually plays. Arc Raider has the advantage of being out first, establishing its player base before Marathon arrives, but if Marathon delivers, it could steal players away. Against Division's Dark Zones, Arc Raiders is more focused. The Division tries to be an RPG shooter with extraction elements, while Arc Raiders is extraction first. That focus works in favor. It does one thing really well rather than multiple things adequately. So here's the $1,000,000 question. Should you buy Arc Raiders? If you've been curious about extraction shooters but found Tarkov too hardcore, absolutely yes. This is the most accessible entry point to a genre while maintaining what makes it special. The $40 price is fair for what you're getting. If you're a player versus player purist who needs perfect balance and competitive integrity, maybe just wait a little while. This is a game where unfairness is a part of the design. You'll lose unfair fights, you'll get betrayed by someone that you generally trusted. That's the game working as intended. Solo players approach with caution. It's playable solo and can be enjoyed that way, but the optimal experience is with friends. If you got a regular squad, this is an easy recommendation. If you're always flying solo, maybe wait for a weekend to test the waters. For content creators and streamer, this has some potential. The organic elements that emerge from the gameplay systems create some great content. The tension translates well into viewing, and the game is visually interesting enough to hold attention. It's not about being the last one standing, it's about getting out alive and something to show for afterwards. That change in victory condition changes everything about how the game feels. The game respects your time more than most extraction shooters. Even failed gives you XP, you're always progressing somehow. For people with limited gaming time, that's super huge. You can jump in for 1 or 2 and feel like you accomplished something. If I had to put a number on it, Arc Raiders is a 7 at launch. It's not perfect, the content quality does concern me, and the balance does need some work, and some systems are still finding their feet. But what is here is polished and engaging and generally innovative in places. The foundation is rock solid, the core gameplay loop is addictive, and the world itself is interesting. The technical performance is excellent. If Embark supports this properly with regular content updates in response to community feedback, this could grow into something very special. What Arc Raider does best is capture that feeling of tension and release that makes extraction shooting so compelling. When you're loaded with loot, extraction is in sight, and you hear footsteps behind you, that moment of panic and decision making is pure gaming gold. Not many games can create that feeling constantly, but Arc Raiders nails it perfectly. The game understands that the extraction shooters are as much about psychology as it is shooting. The mind games with other players, the risk assessments, the paranoia is all a part of the experience. And unlike some competitors that feel like they're just punishing you for playing, Arc Raiders feel like it's challenging but fair. When you die, you usually know why and what you could have done different. Look, I played a lot of shooters over the years, from the golden age of arena shooters to the battle royale boom, and now extraction shooters trying to be the next big thing. Most of them blur together after a while. Arc Raider doesn't. It has its own identity and its own voice and its own reason to exist. That alone makes it worth to check out. Is it going to off? Probably not. Is it going to convert every Warzone player? Definitely not. But for players looking for something different, something with stakes and tension and genuine decision making, Arc Raiders delivers. It's not trying to be everything to everyone. It knows what it is and executes that vision very well. Alright, that's my full review of Arc Raiders. This ended up being way longer than I planned, but there was a lot to unpack with this game. Its ambition and it's different, and most importantly, it's actually pretty fun when everything clicks. If you found this review helpful, hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. Subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to see more reviews like this. I would be definitely covering Arc Raiders as more content drops and the meta develops. Also, I'll be streaming Arc Raiders regularly over on my Twitch channel. If you want to see high-level gameplay, stupid deaths, and probably some betrayal, come hang out. We got a great community building over there. Link is in the description. Same username, Andre the Alpha. Let me know in the comments what you think about Arc Raiders. Are you going to be picking it up? What's your take on extraction shooters in general? Are you team first person or can you live with third person? Let me know in the comments and I'll respond when I can. Until next time, this is Andre reminding you to stay gaming. Remember, trust no one, not even me, especially not me, because I'm going to shoot you. But until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and stay alpha.